Hello, my name is Steve, and I'm a Rickaholic. Hello folks, and welcome to episode 2 of Rickenbacker Anonymous. As I mentioned, I'm Steve. Happy to be here with you once again. I'd like to do a little housekeeping before we get started on today's topic. Specifically, the great reception I've received so far from the first video. Now keep in mind, it was very much an introduction video. There was really little content to speak of. It was just a way of me letting you know what was coming and putting it out there. And I have to say that I'm somewhat overwhelmed by the response that I've gotten. Far more views than I ever would have guessed. Lots more subscribers than I could have anticipated, and plenty of great comments with suggestions and whatnot, and I love it. It's great. I'd also like to mention real quickly here that I've started a Facebook group for Rickenbacker Anonymous, so by all means get on there, search for it, join up. You can leave posts and leave comments, and just like you can here, but a little more direct communication, so that's great. Speaking of the comments, I jotted some of them down here, and I thought I would address you directly and tell you what I was told here. The very first comment came from Bill Larson, who suggested I try a lavalier mic to improve the audio and to cut down on the room reverberation. Well, I listened, and hopefully this sounds a lot better. And as I said before, this is very much going to be a work in progress. Every episode theoretically should be better than the last. And hey, just say, you were there from the beginning. You saw it back in the early days when things were still crude. So one day, hopefully this will be a very pro show with some nice cameras and nice audio and who knows what. And you can say you were there from the beginning. Bill also mentioned that he too had a Model 1000 that, along with a Telecaster, he traded for a 1965 Model 36012, which is the best guitar he's ever owned. And good for you. It sounds like a great choice. Steve Rock 67 said, tone, all about tone. He wants to see comparisons of 21 versus 24 frets, 2 pickups versus 3 pickups for both 6 and 12 string guitars, amps and compression for 6 and 12 string guitars. All great suggestions. We'll keep them in mind. Mike DeSena said if he keeps watching, he'll have to buy another Rick. Well, my condolences. What a nightmare. Again, this is not a sponsored show, so Rickenbacker's certainly not giving me anything to do this, but I feel you. Woodcraft Music said, hey, you're off and running. Right on. Oda292 said, awesome, can't wait to see more. Well, glad to have you aboard, Oda. Plenty more coming. Peace, Love, and Little Donuts, also known as Irwin, said, long live the Rick. I think we can all agree with that sentiment. The Guitar Channel, which I was a subscriber to, said, great idea for a show. Went on to say, I have a 1994 Model 650 that I adore. I'll be following the show. Well, awesome. I actually intend to do a feature on the 650 series in the future. Did I already say the future? I guess that's redundant. But yeah, the 650 series is definitely something interesting, and we're going to touch on those. Go Wahan said, yes, this is what we needed. Well, glad to be of service. Dopey Bruce said, I live right outside Nashville, just started playing bass for Lance Lopez. His only bass is a Rick 4003, but hoping to get more. Hey, great place to start. I got exactly one negative comment, which was deleted before I had a chance to write down who'd posted it, but their comment was simply ZZZZZ, which apparently means they were bored. I guess I'll have to bust out the dancing girls and baby animals next time. You can't please everyone. I mentioned the Facebook page, and already I've gotten a couple of comments. One is they want to hear some playing, which I guarantee you there'll be playing coming in future episodes. In fact, there'll be some playing coming at the end of this one because I'll be selling my first instrument on the show. So you want to stay tuned for that. Also, if someone wants to see a review of the basses Model 4002 and 4005, well, let me tell you, I'd like to see that myself. But seeing as both of those are going for in excess of $10,000 per example, I don't see that happening anytime too soon. Not to say it can't happen eventually, but not right now. So that's pretty much all I have for the comments at the moment. Keep them coming. And as you'll hear me say, well, every episode, no doubt, like the episode if you like it. Subscribe by all means. Click the bell so you get notified. You've heard all this before, but by all means do it, you know. And leave those comments. I want to hear your suggestions because obviously I listen. And I want to give you what you want to see. So it's all interesting to me as well. So I'll be back in just a moment with the meat of the show, today's topic. Stay tuned. So, what is this that I'm holding? If you said a guitar, you're right. If you said a Rickenbacker, you're even more right. But more specifically, what model are you looking at? Now, if you said 330, 335, 340, 345, 360, 365, 370, or 375, you could well be correct. At this point, there's really no way of knowing. Today, our topic is going to be the numbers game, figuring out just exactly what Rickenbacker's number scheme is, at least for the 3 series, and explaining the long misunderstood question of just exactly what is a 360, because there's more than one type of 360. So here's how it goes. This guitar is in fact a Model 330. A little information about the 330. This guitar first appeared in 1958. As I understand, it was designed by Roger Rossmeisel in 1957 or thereabouts. This is a 2014 model, so it's relatively recent. It has all the standard accoutrements and features. We have 2 pickups, which in this case are high gains. Earlier models, pre-1970, I want to say, would have been toaster tops, although those were also offered throughout the history of the company and still are to some degree, special order and whatnot. Features the standard bridge, which does have a cover, although mine is off at the moment because I like to palm mute. The standard cast R Rick tailpiece. The slash or cat's eye sound hole. Sorry about the glare. In this case, we have strap locks. That changed over the years a bit. Dot inlaid 24 fret neck, which mostly would have been 21 frets before 1970, as I understand it. The 5 control layout on the pick guard, which is 2 volumes and 2 tones, plus a blend and a pickup selector. Shaler tuning keys, which is also something that varied a bit over the years. This is from the more modern era where we're back to the smaller headstock. That changed throughout time, partially on the whims of the public and of Rickenbacker themselves, and also dependent upon the availability of the keys that were being offered by Rickenbacker at the time. So anyway, this is the standard model. In a lot of ways, this is Rickenbacker's flagship. Not their top of the line by any stretch, but pretty much what defines a Rickenbacker guitar. This is what most people think of. It's also, according to John Hall, the company CEO, the perennial biggest seller, okay? So this is a 330. How they arrived at 330 in the first place, I have no idea. Some people might ask what happened to the 100s and 200s. There is an answer to that. Certainly the 100s were lap steel guitars, which were the early bread and butter of the Rickenbacker company and its earliest days. This would have been pre-1950. But anyway, for whatever reason, this became the 330. Now, the numbering system isn't that complicated, but it certainly can confuse a person who's new to the entire subject, and somehow manages to confuse some folks who are anything but new. There was a famous interview with Tom Petty when he mentioned his first Rickenbacker, which was the pointy one. He didn't know the numbers. He thought it might have been a 360. It actually was a 330, but he didn't know. Okay, so if you took this exact guitar, this 330, and added a vibrato system, whether it be an Accent, a Bigsby, in the earliest days, a Kaufman, whatever it might be, this would have become a 335. You add 5 for vibrato. If it had a third pickup, you would add 10, which is to say this would become a 340 if it had 3 pickups. 3 pickups and a vibrato, 345. And so it was. Now, they later came out with a more deluxe model, which had mostly the same features, but also had binding around the top and back of the body and triangular fret markers. And that was the 360. Now, before we go any farther, I want to show you, since I happen to have one handy, a 340. 3 pickups. This happens to be a 340-12, but essentially you take any model, add a slash and a 12, and you've got the 12-string version. So here's a 340. This one's actually outfitted with aftermarket creamery toaster top pickups, and the knobs have been replaced with the vintage black style. But otherwise, it's a fairly modern 340-12. I believe this one's from 2008. Also, just as a quick aside, this will get talked more about in a future episode, but more modern Rickenbacker 12 strings often have slots all the way through the headstock, see right through, whereas the vintage style earlier models had channels carved in, but they didn't go all the way through the headstock. It's just a little aside. I'm sure someone out there was going to ask. So, back to the 360. Here's an example of a 370, which is a 360 with an extra pickup. And again, this is a 12 string. As you can see, channels in the headstock that don't go all the way through. But it has all the 360 features, which is to say a bound top and back, crushed pearl inlays, or something that approximates crushed pearl inlays depending on the era. This is a 1995, so these are actually a form of plastic, but they kind of fit the part. Anyway, so this is essentially what you would say is the 360 arch type. All right. Now this is what we had through 1964. At some point in 1964, someone came up with the idea of redesigning this body. Oh, lovely. I'm hearing the Nashville International Airport. Hopefully you're not hearing it, but if you are, I apologize. Now, I tried really hard to get a bunch of fire glows here to keep things uniform, but I don't have a fire glow modern 360 handy, so we'll have to go with my Jet Glow black on black. This was the more modern body style they came up with late 64, which I believe was introduced in 1965. It starts with the exact same body blank, but rather than carving a channel in the top for binding, they simply smoothed the entire top. Still has binding on the back, but they smooth the entire top, partially for looks, and I'm told partially because they wanted a more soft feel for the arm when it crossed over the body. Some people might have complained, who knows. But so this is a 360, just as well as this would have been a 360, or in this case a 370. So the confusion comes from the fact that, is this a 360? Yeah. If it was double bound, would it be a 360? Well, yeah. So there are two different types of 360s, which causes no end of confusion for noob enthusiasts, and as I said, in some cases, even not so new. So this is the more modern style of 360. This is the more vintage version. Now, in the 70s, I'm told, all through the 80s, and beyond in some cases, this became known as the 360 WB with binding, or WBBS with binding both sides, for no better reason than to just confuse the general public, apparently. But regardless, you get the idea. 360, .370, 12. .340, 12. And the ubiquitous 330. Now those of you with sharp eyes will also notice this is a good time to compare and contrast the various shades of fire glow that you can run into. This is more of a deep fire glow, not quite the amber fire glow you sometimes hear about, but it's definitely deep and rich. This has a bit more of a pink to the center. This is a very light center. All just comes down to, well, a number of factors. The era that it comes from. These are different eras. Also, the individual painter might have a different technique and style. So you're going to see all the above at various times, as well as other variations. including one that's known as Clown Glow, which is sort of extremely orange and apparently not in a good way. So are you confused yet? It's the best I could do. If you have any questions about this or have any other examples, by all means, ask your questions, post your examples down in the comments. I'd love to see photos of your personal Rickenbackers, and that's true of any model, but especially the one that's on topic at the moment. So, here's the numbers game. Now you know what is and isn't a 360 or 370 or 375. Thankfully, at least the 12 strings didn't come with vibratos, or else we'd have to go into 375 12s and whatnot as well. Not to mention the tuning headaches and stringing nightmares. Let's be thankful for that. Next, we're going to look at one of these guitars, this particular 330, which is going to be for sale. I'm going to go over the condition and we're going to give it a listen. Stay tuned. So we're back. Here's the 330. Serial number is 1439687, making it a 2014. I can look up and tell you what month, but I'll let you do that for yourself if you're interested. As you can see, it's a beautiful fire glow. Again, I apologize for the glare. What you're seeing right there is a reflection of the iPad that I'm using to record this video. We're mighty high tech here at Rickenbacker Anonymous. Let's give you a good look here. So you can see it's very clean. Look down the side. Look at the headstock. There are two dings to speak of. One you can notice here at the headstock, just a bit of a ding here, and it doesn't actually go all the way through the wood, but there it is. Headstock. Lovely fingerboard. We come to this side and we see the one major flaw in the finish, which is this chip right here, which does go all the way to the wood. I believe that's the only major flaw in the finish. It's a nice figuring to the back. I should try recording these at night. Anyway, there it is. It's an overall very good condition, but it has been played. I've used it for gigs with my band. As I mentioned earlier, it makes a wonderful rhythm guitar for a lead singer. But it has been played. It has been used. And in all honesty, I would encourage you, if you've never owned a Rickenbacker before, make your first purchase a used model. Preferably a used model that has a bit of wear on it, and I'll explain why. I bought my first Rickenbacker back in 1991. I remember it well. Bought it from the Southside Guitar Center, Southside Chicago, 8250 South Cicero. It's since moved. Very similar to this, but it was jet glow. If I remember correctly, I paid exactly $700 including case. I was a pretty good negotiator back then. And boy, have things changed, because $700 for a brand new 330 now? No. But it was a beautiful guitar. And I couldn't wait to take it home, and I'd open it up and smell that wonderful aroma. There's nothing like the smell of a brand new Rickenbacker. If you haven't ever experienced it, I highly recommend it. I immediately changed out a couple of items to customize it to suit myself. I bought the gold-backed vintage style pick guard and truss rod cover, and the large oven style knobs. I was trying to go for a bit of a vintage look. It was a gorgeous guitar, and in the 10 or 11 years I owned it, I almost never played it. I would take it out of the case, consider taking it to a gig, and then think about the possibility of scratching, dinging, or denting it, and then put it right back in its case. What a waste. These are instruments. They're not Fabergé eggs. They're not holy relics. You could make a strong argument that they are works of art, but they're playable, functional works of art. So anyway, enough of my own little rambling on that subject, but buy Rickenbackers, play Rickenbackers. Forget the kid gloves. going to be testing this guitar through this Vox AC15 C1. This is the single 12-inch version. I have the reverb and tremolo turned off because few things grate my gears more than when I watch a guitar demonstration video and the first thing the guy says is, I'm adding just a touch of chorus and reverb. No, we don't need a touch of chorus and reverb. We want to hear the guitar, not your reverb and your chorus. Totally clean amp. I've got the preamp volume set low enough that we're not going to distort. Let's get an idea of what our volume is here. Now, as I mentioned, this is being recorded through an iPad. For audio, I'm going to see if this lavalier mic will pick up the sound of the amp as well. If I have to, I'll go back and re-record this segment and use my phone for audio. I have a Google Pixel 2 which has shockingly good audio, but I'm not looking forward to the chore of having to sync audio to video just yet. I'm still a bit of a noob to this whole thing, and I'd rather not deal with that. So anyway, got everything turned up, mixer set about halfway. Here's our neck pickup. Nice, warm and full. Sounds nice. Onward to the center position, which is where a lot of Rickenbacker players leave their guitars all the time and balance the tone with their mix knob. Starting to hear some chime there. Nice bit of chime. Now moving on to the bridge position, which is where I tend to live most of the time. Like most Rickenbackers, this really isn't intended for shred. You can play a lead, but it's a bit limiting. That's what you come to expect, at least with the standard model Rickenbackers. Anyway, this has very low action. In all honesty, slightly lower than I would probably keep it if I was going to keep the guitar myself. In my guitar style, I like to be able to bend, let's say, the G string underneath the D, which would be difficult on this with the action this low. Of course, you can raise it up. I do have the bridge cover. I have it off at the moment because I like to be able to palm mute. But I'll reinstall it before I send the guitar out. But all in all, it's pretty much a perfect example of a Rickenbacker 330. And I think it would make a wonderful first Rickenbacker for anyone out there, or a wonderful second, third, fourth, or 10th for that matter. But it's just a great 330, and I'm going to sell it for a great price. Of course, I'm going to have the price somewhat inflated on Reverb, so what you see there, keep in mind, we always inflate prices on Reverb when we make the initial listings, understanding that people are immediately going to start lowballing and sending offers. Just know this, if you're a viewer of this show and you send me an offer, make sure to mention in your comments that you are a viewer, and I'll take that into consideration. Make sure you get an extra good deal. It does come with its original hard shell case, and it's a beautiful guitar. So there you are. One gnarly chip, one scuff, otherwise beautiful 330. So that's it for episode 2. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'd point out that upon reviewing the audio for the guitar review, I did notice that there was a bit of crunchiness on the transients, and I thought about re-recording with my phone and trying to sync up the audio of the video, and I decided I'm going to leave it because you can find many examples of what a Rickenbacker 330 sounds like all over YouTube. You still get the gist. Just understand that the audio that I gave you wasn't quite as well as it could be, but leaves lots of room for improvement in the future. It's a great guitar and it sounds wonderful. Wanted to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for your comments. Thanks for the great warm reception we've got from the first episode. Hopefully you'll stick around. Hopefully, if you haven't already, you'll like, you'll subscribe, you'll ring the bell to be notified, you'll leave me a nice comment, or even not so nice. I want to hear your suggestions for both improving the show and for future topics. Yes, the audio will get better. Hopefully it's already gotten better, at least in terms of my dialogue. Picture will get better with time. Everything will get better. As I said before, we have only one place to go, which is up, and we're headed there. So until I see you next, which I'm guessing will be about another week, stay cool, keep playing, and chime on.